once again to the stage, Jason Henney. All right, guys, now is the time I've been waiting for. This is going to be really fun. We've got some very special guests that are going to come out, answer questions. We're going to talk to the creator of Final Destination, Jeffery Reddick. And if that wasn't good enough, we also have creator and director of the Blair Witch Project, Dan Myrick. And as a special treat, joining us on the stage is the associate editor from iHorror.com. Please welcome Waylon Jordan. All right, this is very exciting for me. I'm a local filmmaker, so getting to talk to you guys is really, really cool. I want to start by asking you, because I know you guys are collaborating on a project, and we're going to hopefully get to talk a little bit about that. But I'm curious what, Jeffery, what the Blair Witch Project means for you, and then Dan, I will ask what Final Destination means for you. And then Waylon, I'll let you kind of add your 2 cents on both films. So let's start with you, Jeffery. What did the Blair Witch Project mean to you, or what does it mean for horror?
I'm kind of embarrassed. I actually haven't seen that movie. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. The funny thing is, I was working at New Line Cinema when the Blair Witch came out, and I actually didn't know all the hype that it was fake, or that it wasn't a real story. What? So I kind of went in. I know. Somebody said, "What?"
Spoilers.
I'm very gullible. You know, I was interested in acting, so I was really drawn in by the performances, which made the movie feel so real. And it was the first film that I'd seen of that kind, the found footage thing. So I was just really enraptured by it. Yeah.
It caught a lot of us by surprise, and I think a lot of people were thinking, like, this is, and that was a lot of the marketing, is like, this really happened. And I think a lot of that does, you know, because of the performances in that film.
Yeah, I fell for it. So.
Okay. Dan, tell me what your feelings are about Final Destination and how it impacted horror.
I mean, it had a huge impact. I thought it was one of the most clever premises I've ever seen, where death pursues you. I just thought that was a brilliant premise and brilliant idea. The execution was so well done. And to me, it just reinvigorated, you know, what I love about horror movies. And that's, you know, the excitement is you can't escape death. There's just no way, and you can't fight it off. And that really makes you vulnerable. And I love when good horror does that, when the protagonists just have no way out. There's nothing they can do. So they did a great job with that. And obviously had a huge impact. The franchise is, you know, one of the biggest ever. And so yeah, I love it when anything like that kind of hits and takes off and adds to the whole kind of horror canon that we all love. It's what makes it fun to go to the movies.
Yeah, it kind of came out at a time when, you know, after Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and there's a lot of teen movies, and this one felt like it was a little bit different than those films. So it kind of, and I think it lasted a little bit longer because we've got sequel after sequel that kind of, it was a formula that lasted. So yeah, I think I agree with that. Waylon, what are your thoughts on both films?
Well, I haven't been camping since 1999. Like, I went to see this movie I live in a small rural town in Texas, and I drove 50, 60 miles to go see this because the only place it was playing was at Dallas, I believe, was the closest to me. And we went to see it, and everybody had a really visceral reaction at the end, and people were talking about, oh, it wasn't really that scary to me or whatever, and I looked at them and said, this is terrifying. I have to drive back to the woods. I have to drive back through the trees to get home. Do you not realize how terrifying this is? So yeah, that's what the Blair Witch was for me, and I still watch it and I still shiver every time I turn it on. As for Jeffery's movie, every time I trip over my own feet twice in one day, I message Jeffery and like, have you been writing about me? Or what have you said about me? But yeah, it was, and what I really like about it, you know, you said it really was different and it had something different going for it. Death as a force, I mean, that's incredible. What's more terrifying than knowing death is really coming after you one way or another, and you're just in for it.
Thank you.
So yeah, I absolutely, I was floored by Final Destination the first time I saw it.
Jeffrey, when you put Final Destination together, is it true that it wasn't originally going to be teen actors in it? Is that?
Yeah. The actual original version of it was a script I wrote for the X-Files just to get an agent. And one of my friends at New Line was like, "This is a great movie idea. You should write it as a feature." So I wrote a 12-page outline for the movie, all adult characters that didn't know each other, and then Scream came out, which I love. But of course, in the studio, it's like, make them all teenagers, because teenagers are hot now. So then I made them teenagers. And we actually had a hard time. I had the project set up with some producers who had a first look deal at New Line, because even though I'd worked there for like 11 years, I knew there was on subconscious level, they saw me as an employee. You know, they'd like read your stuff, but still they thought of me as the guy that works in marketing. So I sent the project to producers, and they kind of kept passing on it, or soft passing on it. They didn't want to pass on it, but they're like, we just don't get it how death, you know, like, you can't fight death, and you know, how do you fight it? It's like, that's the whole point of the movie. And so we had to threaten to take it to Miramax, which was their competitor. Harvey Weinstein could have had it. That would have been friggin' awesome. And New Line bought it.
Isn't that funny how much money the series has made now, and how much of a mistake that would have been?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty.
That's really interesting. I know another interesting thing about you and your kind of journey to work in the studio system goes back to all the way when you were a kid and a Nightmare on Elm Street fan. Do you want to talk about?
You want me to tell that story again? Okay.
I
don't mind telling.
I think it's good because we have a lot of filmmakers in here who are always like, how do I get into the system? And your tale is kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I only joke about that because I talk about it so much, and I'm sure I'm like, people are sick of hearing this story. But no, when I was 14, I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, and so I saw Nightmare on Elm Street, which is my favorite movie of all time. And, you know, I'm like a little hillbilly, I don't know any better, so I went home and wrote like a prequel idea, and I found out the address for New Line Cinema, and I sent a letter to Bob Shea with the prequel, and he sent it back to me because it was unsolicited, you know, they hadn't gotten it through an agent. So I wrote him back, and I said, excuse me, sir, but I've seen like 3 of your movies, and I spent $3 on your stuff, so I think you can take 5 minutes to read my story. And he wrote me back, and he thanked me for my aggressive introduction, and was very encouraging. And from age 14 to 19, when I went to New York, him and his assistant Joy Mann would send me scripts, and they'd read my stuff, and it was a much different time back then.
So we can't do that now. We can't.
I mean, you can.
I mean, it's a little hit and miss more, but back 20 years ago, like when Blair was coming out and all, it was much more, I think, filmmaker-centric. It's a lot more consolidated now, so it's harder kind of to be taken, or, you know, edgy ideas to be taken seriously. They want franchises and sequels and, you know, established IPs and all that. So it's tougher to break in, but at the same time, you know, the way we think is well, look, if they won't let you into the cool club, then you go make your own cool club, right? You go make your own movies. You have more ways of distributing your films now than ever before, and get people to get to see your movies. And there are awesome festivals like this that you can showcase your stuff and make connections. So, you know, that's okay too. So, and with the technology the way it is today, you can shoot movies cheaper than ever before. So, you know, where there's clouds, you always find a silver lining in some way. You just have to keep making your art, man. Keep shooting is what I say.
Yeah, and there are so many, I mean, back then there were only like 7 studios, but now there are so many production companies and smaller places that have deals at the studios. But I always thought, well, you don't need to have a studio deal now. Like, that shouldn't be your goal to get, because like he said, they're after, you know, they're just going to keep doing remakes and sequels and things based on comic books because it's a safer bet for them. But there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies that didn't exist before that will finance projects and distribute them now. So there's a lot more actual opportunity now to get yourself out there.
Because there's also a lot more platforms now. Just because you don't get a film in the theater doesn't mean it can't get out in the world.
That's true. I mean, when I was making student films at University of Central Florida in Orlando. You know, you made a student film and you saw it, the student film showcase at the end of the year, and that was it. Nobody, unless someone came over to your house and you threw it in the VHS, no one else would see your stuff. So now you put it on YouTube or wherever, Vimeo, and people can see your stuff, and you can use it as your reel and help you make connections and whatnot. So, but you know, you have to be smart about how you go out with your material. You have to know how to promote yourself, and you guys have more means than ever to promote yourself. So it's about being smart. You're more your own kind of PR firm now than it was back in those days. And so the onus is more on the filmmaker to kind of spread the word about their work, but it is possible. You can do it. And we found a way on Blair, and someone will, you know, this happens all the time in the film business today. So just because if you get a no from the big studio, don't take that as that your work is no good. It may not just plug into their system, but you can make your own way nowadays.
That's interesting. That leads me to Waylon. Often, a lot of times, people will send trailers and things to you for you to watch and say, hey, can you promote my film? You know, I've got this short, you know, maybe it's a short film. Like, when you get those kind of things, do you have to watch all of them and then make a decision, or how does that work?
Yeah, and quite frankly, you know, working at iHorror and writing there now for about 5 years, I get a lot. Like, my email inbox fills up all the time. So just for future reference, because there are people out there I know who are trying to promote things and trying to get their stuff in front of reviewers, make it pop. Make your email really pop when you send it to me. Don't just send me stills, and don't just send me a trailer. Show me that you have a personality. Talk to me, you know, talk to me like I'm a real person on the other side of this, and I will give you that same time, because it is really important how you approach, because we get a lot and we have to prioritize. And you know, I've missed some really good things before just because I didn't have the time. Or here's the other thing, don't friend request me on Facebook and slide into my DMs 30 seconds later. Because that doesn't speak well all the time. And if you're going to approach me and tell me, oh, I love your work and I've been reading your stuff for so long and you've never actually heard from me before, I'm gonna know in about 15 minutes. So, you know, make sure that you're approaching people with respect, the same respect that you want in return. We're here to help you. And I love watching independent films. I love watching short films. I've gotten to know so many people who are sitting out in this audience because I champion these things on a regular basis. But yeah, make yourself stand out, and you're halfway there.
That's great. Jeffrey, you mentioned reboots and remakes in the studio system. I'm curious about how all three of you feel about that. It's kind of, we're seeing some great stuff, original stuff. And we're also seeing, it's almost 50-50, you know, 50% of the stuff, the horror stuff that we see that gets to theaters is remakes or reboots. What are you guys' feelings on that? You think you like it, or?
I mean, I don't think reboots necessarily, I think a lot of times it'll introduce a new generation of film or audiences to something, and then they'll go back and watch the original. So I don't think it takes away from it. Some of the greatest films have been reboots, like The Thing, and that's the only one I'll say right now because I can't think of any other ones. But there are more. So I don't think there's anything wrong with rebooting at all. I think a lot of times what you see with the studios is they're about to lose the rights to something, so they'll just throw out something really quickly so they can keep the rights. And I think, you know, the quality, it's for me, it's more about quality. And I've written a remake, so I can't talk too much smack about them.
Which film did you write a remake?
The most hated remake of all time, the Day of the Dead remake. It's not really the most hated, but it's up there. Yeah. But in my defense, for what I sold to them and what got shot was completely different. So you would read interviews where
that was them.
You would read interviews where I'm like, fans are going to love it because it's faithful to the original, and then later on in the interviews I'd be like, it's a movie. That's all I can say about it.
So does that mean there's a future for Final Destination getting a reboot or a sequel?
Yeah, they're actually, there's going to be another Final Destination. It's in the works right now.
What?
And that would be a continuation of kind of what we've seen?
In the way that Death operates, it will be. The story, I wouldn't call it a reboot necessarily because Death still has the MO, but it's not structured the same way as all the other ones. I mean, it still has what you want in a Final Destination movie, but it's not like big accident right away and then just knocking them all off. They've added some cool stuff to it, so.
Very cool. Any ideas on when we could potentially see something like that?
You know, next year is the 20th anniversary because I wrote the first one when I was 10 years old. And so, yeah, I promise really. So they want to get it like rolling and hopefully out by next year, but I'm sure it'll be rolling by next year.
That's great. Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Dave, what are your thoughts on reboots and remakes?
I mean, I'm fine with it as long as they're done well. I mean, I don't have any problem with it. If, you know, I get why they're made. I get why studios skew towards those because, you know, they're having to appeal to a mass audience and they're having huge investments in these properties, so they need to guarantee some return. So as long as they're done well, I mean, I grew up on big Hollywood films and I love them, but it's when they're sort of, you know, half-asses when I get a little pissed off. Because, you know, they're asking for the same amount of money, you know, to go in there, and if it feels like it's been phoned in, then it hurts the entire business when that happens.
Right.
So, but I think there's room for everything. You know, again, with all these other platforms and all these other mediums that you can get your film seen out there, there's just a lot of other opportunities for you to find a revenue stream, to find a way to get your film out there and seen. And if you're not fixated on having a theatrical release, which is kind of the way it was back when I was growing up, you can find a niche audience for your stuff, for your work and your vision, and potentially make revenue in a small but very real way if you can continue making films, and that's being done all the time.
They did. Would you consider it a reboot of the Blair Witch a few years ago? Because it went by the same title.
You mean in the last one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, what I liked about the movie is that unlike the sequel that came out right after ours did, I mean, they stayed true to the mythology, which is what I appreciated about it. But in a way, it was sort of a reboot because they sort of dipped into the same well, found footage well we originally started. And so I was hesitant about going that route just because it feels like, you know, it feels like the same movie. But it did okay. I mean, it didn't do badly.
Yeah.
And it was well executed, I thought, for the most part. But it felt a lot like the movie we had done originally. So, but it was for a new generation of kids. So, you know, if a lot of people hadn't gone to the first one, they could take that one in for at face value. So,
Yeah.
But technically, I guess that was sort of a reboot, kind of a little bit.
Some of us almost got to see that at the 20th anniversary party that played at the Tampa Theater.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Almost the beginning, got the beginning of it.
Yeah.
That was a little freaky, but actually it worked out for the best. We had a 20th anniversary screening of the original Blair Witch at Tampa Theater, and gorgeous venue. And apparently there was a snafu with getting the original film, and they got the most recent version in 2016. And it started playing the 2016 version.
For the 20th anniversary of the film.
For the 20th
and it's
anniversary
not
of the movie.
20 years later. Yeah.
This is not my movie. So
You got up and stormed out.
I thought, this is an outrage. So I felt so bad for the theater manager. He's like, oh my God, it's sweat bullets. And so fortunately, we went up on stage and we kind of like, you know, said we might have to abort this because it was apparently a download, a DCP download, so it's a big thing, and there's no way you could download a new one. So he went up on stage, said, I think we're going to have to cancel, that if you want refunds. And then fortunately, somebody in the audience had brought in a DVD of the original to have him sign it. Anyone got one in the audience? I got one here! String it up!
They were heroes.
So that guy was a hero, and I couldn't have scripted it any better. It was that the fans came and saved the day, so we got to see the movie, so it was cool.
It was a pretty awesome moment.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And you were really nice. You gave him a autograph poster from like the Sundance
the
release of the
Sundance
original.
poster, yeah, so
to
it was
show your
very
appreciation.
thankful, and he was very, very appreciative. But nice kid, and had it not been
been for him, it would have been a much more awkward evening. So
Yeah. So the lesson there is always keep copies
always keep
of
a spare
films.
DVD in your pocket.
That leads me to Waylon. I'm curious what your thoughts are on, because you see so many films and talk about so many films, the state of reboots and remakes.
Well, yeah, and I agree with the two distinguished gentlemen here. As long as you're doing it well, and as long as you're, I think with a reboot, especially if you're trying to stay true but still bring something new to it, I don't see a problem with it. I'm one of those authors online and writers online who finds myself reading comments, and it's really bad for your health. I really tell you, don't do it, because it's a war zone in there. But I see a lot of complaints about it, but really, if you don't like the reboot, then I really recommend just go back and watch the original, because it doesn't wipe out the original's existence, and that's my thing. If you don't like the reboot, then go back and watch the original. I happen to have loved a couple of the reboots that have come out. I'm not going to say which ones because I'm not getting added on on Twitter today. But yeah, I happen to have enjoyed some of the reboots. But I think there's a place for them. And there's certainly an audience for them.
Sure, yeah.
I know which one you're talking about.
Do you guys
Talk about that later, Jeffrey. You're not calling me out today.
Do you guys want to briefly say some films, they don't have to be reboots or remakes, horror films that you've enjoyed in the last maybe 5 to 10 years that you thought have done really well, or kind of pushed the genre, or done something unique or interesting that you liked?
Yeah, start on that end because I haven't had a nap today.
You need to think about it. Well, yeah, Will, you see so many things. What can you talk about that you have really enjoyed? Maybe something that can be a recommendation for people who it could be a big one or one that maybe people haven't seen.
I don't know, some of the things that I've seen in the last few years that still stick with me. I really enjoyed a film called The Taking of Deborah Logan back in 2014. I don't know if you guys saw that one.
It's a soft clap, it's a golf clap.
Yes, I saw that. Still one of my favorite films that I've seen in the last decade. It just really knocked my socks off.
And you got to kind of get to know the director on that, yeah?
Yeah, now here's where I feel called out. Because I just told you guys don't just slide into people's DMs necessarily, but Adam Robitel, the director of that, I saw the film, and I was like, I've got to talk to this guy about this movie. And the only place I could find him was on Facebook, so there I went right into the DMs.
You said
So what I'm saying is also shoot your shot. It never hurts. And I've gotten to know Adam over the last several years really well. We have talked about movies, and I was able to interview him and do a lot of promotion for that film when it first came out, and really gotten to know a very talented filmmaker that way. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed Hereditary last year, and
we like Hereditary?
I don't know, there's something about someone sawing their own head off with a piece of piano wire that just terrifies me. But yeah, so things of that nature. I tend to go in for the supernatural and the paranormal, and that's my jam. So anything along those lines, I'm generally watching it and doing a lot of reviews and stuff. But those two in particular, really, I really enjoyed those.
Cool. Dan, what have you liked in the last couple of years?
I loved Hereditary. That was great. Tony Collette, that was an amazing performance. It Follows, I liked a lot.
Do you like It Follows?
Yeah. I mean, I just love when films are just small and contained, and they find a way to keep you just on the edge of your seat from one moment to the next. It's really, great execution. So, Get Out was another one, which I thought was great. So yeah, I mean, they're coming. I mean, every time you turn around, somebody reinvents the genre, does something new with it, puts a new twist on it, and that's the human condition. That's what makes it so great. That why we're still before AI takes over everything, humans can still make movies. So it's really exciting to see it, and we were fortunate back in the day of Blair to kind of put our own spin on the horror genre, but watching other people do it nowadays it inspires me. It keeps me going, so I love it.
Yeah, I still feel put on the spot. I definitely enjoyed It Follows. Get Out. Hereditary as a piece of art, I enjoyed it. I thought it was beautifully shot and the acting was great, but I tried to buy it and watch it again. I'm like, these people are just so miserable for 2 hours and there's no hope at all in this movie. And I need a little hope in my life. So. But the artistry of it I really appreciate.
So Jeffrey wants shiny, happy horror.
No, I just want a few laughs. The Conjuring. I love The Conjuring.
Yeah.
I think that was an excellent movie. I watch everything. I'm just I can't think of any other ones.
No, that's a good list.
It's just because I can't think.
No, it's a good list. Yeah, you mentioned Toni Collette's performance in Hereditary, and I was really surprised she didn't get nominated for an Oscar.
I was blown away she didn't get nominated.
She
That was
has
an
that
incredible performance.
That scene when she's just like melting on the floor, just so upset. I was like, that is.
And
awesome.
there was so much subtext to her look and her eyes, and that's what I love. When I was growing up, I grew up with The Exorcist and The Omen, and Jacob's Ladder is one of my favorite films, and those really back in the day really weren't considered horror necessarily. They were just considered really good films with great stories, great characters, great writing, execution, and I love it when today's films do that. Like, this is just a great film. It's a great film, great character, execution, direction, and so I really appreciate it, and I like the sophisticated horror that we're seeing on some level that's really getting recognition, and really, even on the television side, you're seeing really good quality direction, acting, that people are taking the genre, more seriously, and these are the kinds of things that should get nominated for Oscars. I really do believe it.
Right. So it was nice when Jordan Peele, won for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now he just struck a huge deal, so now he's got his own studio.
Yeah, he can kind of do whatever he wants now.
Yeah.
That's great.
Which is great. I mean, that's a horror director that's just knocked it out of the park in a couple movies, and here we go. Now he can make what he wants, which is where we're headed.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I know, just so I get a feel, round of applause, who's a filmmaker or in filmmaking in the crowd? So we do have a pretty big group of filmmakers, so yeah, I want to make sure we get to talk a little bit more about that and possibly bestow some advice on filmmakers coming up.
Bestow advice? Did you just say that?
Yeah.
Don't take any wooden nickels.
I like that.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
We'll bequeath some advice on you.
Yeah. Let's start with let's say somebody has a short film and they're interested in doing features, like a lot of people who submitted for this festival, like, what is your advice for making that next step to potentially making feature films?
I think it's, first of all, keep working. I mean, I think getting a couple of shorts under your belt helps. The hardest thing to do is to find equity. It doesn't matter what level you are at your career, and how many films you have made, but people are always willing to come in later if somebody's put in actual cash equity on a project. So that's kind of the hardest thing to find. But the good thing is there are a lot of people out there who want to kind of get into film. So if you're looking to kind of transition from feature or from short to feature, I think you would have to make as many contacts as you can with your short, and hopefully have people in positions that can find equity, to be honest. I mean, you may have some better advice on that, but that's just kind of the reality that I see. Because a lot of times people will send me projects and say, hey, can you read my script and get it financed? And I'm like, I can't get my own shit financed. So,
Yeah, a lot. It's like, can you help me?
I can read it, but I can't. Yeah, so I think, but if you get your stuff out there and people see it, I mean, Lights Out, James Wan just happened to see that short and fall in love with it, and of course, if James Wan wants to make a feature out of a short, they will do it, right? So that's why I think it's important to keep.
But one of the biggest things I tell people that are like, I broke in doing shorts, and that's how I got networked. But a lot of people don't realize that it's like you'll have a short and it'll make the festival runs, but you don't have a feature film script to follow up. So make sure you've got the feature script, whether it's your own or it's a feature-length version of your short, or you've got one of your favorite scripts that you have in your back pocket. So when you do get some accolades, or maybe you get a few awards, you've got something to hand somebody who's interested in your skill set, or you acquire a script with a producer or whomever, but have that script ready to go, because they're going to ask you, do you have a feature? And if you don't, if you just go, then you've missed the boat. They'll move on to the next filmmaker who's sitting 2 seats behind you. So have a script ready to go. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's good advice. Well, what do you think? What do you think for people trying to make the leap from shorts to features?
You know, it really does come back to story, and you can have Meryl Streep in your film, but if you have a rotten script, there's not much that can be done for it. And I say just keep hacking away at it, just keep writing. If somebody doesn't like the short that you've written already, write another one, get ready, do what you can. Like they were saying, have something in your back pocket, have something ready to go. I have seen so many filmmakers over the last several years, and I'm actually floored by it, because every time I turn around, they've got another short film that they've made. But you know what? They are putting out all of this content, and people are paying attention, and it's getting better all the time. So be ready, be ready and have that in your pocket ready to go, and just keep honing the craft, because somebody is going to pay attention.
And usually I always follow the rule, less is more. I mean, when I was in film school, some of us knuckleheads would we scrape together 10 grand and I'm going to shoot a feature film, epic, Star Wars, whatever. Bad idea genes, right? So usually what you want to do, if you've got a little bit of money, it's better to shoot 5 minutes that's really good than 55 minutes that's okay, right? So if you're building a reel, you're building a short, or you're putting stuff up on your website or Vimeo, keep it simple, keep it short, but most producers or people that are going to give you money are going to look at the first 2 minutes anyway, if you're lucky. So make it count and put your best stuff up there. But don't try to conquer the whole mountain if you've only got a few grand to spend. It's better to make something really nice that's shorter, and then let them imagine what the bigger picture could be if you've got a real budget.
Going along, talking about how they're going to watch the first 2 minutes of your short, maybe, if you're lucky. And I also review books for the website, and I just read. I get a lot of books in the mail also from publishers, and I picked up a book the other day that had been sent to me. It was sitting in a pile. I didn't know which one I was going to start working on, and I opened it up, and the opening sentence was, I started collecting my sister's suicide notes when I was 7 years old. And I was like, holy crap. It's that distilled idea that just seizes and makes you want to keep going. And it's the same with the film. Catch us in the first minute. If you've got a 5-minute short, make sure that I am absolutely glued to those first 30 seconds, because then we're going to keep going. And it's that kind of thing.
Yep. That's great advice. Let's take it to, Dan mentioned film school. Maybe if somebody hasn't made a short film yet and they're like, I want to do this, I don't even know where to start. Should I think about going to film school? What do you think, Jeffrey? You think it's...
I didn't even finish college, and I majored in theater, so I learned about writing by reading scripts, and learned about filmmaking by working at a studio, and I'm still learning every time I do something. I don't want to say don't go to school, because I'm a very big proponent of education. I think that's really important. But I don't, it's one of those things, like, you can spend like, God knows what tuition is now to go to film school. You could spend that on school, or, but if you're not going to go to school, I think you have to be very focused and dedicated that you're going to make films, and you're going to keep working at it. You're not just going to write one script, you're going to write many scripts. So I don't know, my background is my own, so I don't want to tell people not to go to film school, but I don't think you have to go to film school. But I will say, like, I was speaking with Craig Perry at USC like a month ago to their film class, and there were directors, writers, all kinds of different vocations in the class, and Craig asked them, so you're the directors, how many of you all know the writers in the class? And none of the directors did. And he goes, that's a problem, because you're directors, you need writers, you should be best friends with these people. So if you're going to go to film school, or even if you're not going and you're going to try to start to build a creative community around you, you need people around you who are supportive, who are talented, who are in my opinion, you know, just easy to get along with, and you know, directors should be not getting to know writers because you need them, and writers need directors. So, you know, I think that that's something even people in film school, they were like a light bulb went off in their head. It's like, oh yeah, I guess we should, you know. So.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the school and it depends on the tuition. I mean, there's a lot of factors that you have to sort of kind of weigh about is it worth it or not. I mean, you know, when I went to UCF, it was really cheap. And basically it was 2 portables out behind the engineering building, so they couldn't charge a lot. But it was free access to gear, right? And reduced rates on film processing. And I looked at it as a kind of a real practical matter. Well, I can build a reel for 2 years, get a degree, which is nice, but not required. But I was able to get a lot of shooting under my belt relatively inexpensively and learn the craft of filmmaking and, you know, connect with a lot of people that were doing the same thing as me. We were all helping each other out to get to that same end goal. So it was very helpful for me, but if it had been 50 grand a year to go there, probably wouldn't have done it. I would put that money into a movie. So, you know, it's like anything in life. You get out of it what you put into it. And you can go to film school thinking it's going to be the next big thing for you and it's going to launch your career. That's not usually what it is. But if you do, like Jeffery is saying, you find the writers in the room if you're not a writer. You find the DPs in the room if you're not a DP. You connect with those people. Use those folks because you're all in the same boat all together for at least a couple of years. You're all helping each other out. Those relationships you'll have for the rest of your career. And you can get a lot out of it if you put it in. So that is what it was for me. It helped me a lot, and I still work with some of those people to this day. And you know, so you just have to kind of weigh all those factors before you make your own decisions, and you can go either way.
Yeah, I've kind of always felt like people who did really well after film school probably would have done really well without film school. Because it's like a motivation or drive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a different world. Like if you go to USC or something, it's a different environment. I mean, there's something to be said about having, like, I don't know, at NYU having Spike Lee teaching a class for you. You know, that's some real advice, right? But you're also spending the money to not only go to that film school but live in New York, right? So there's a lot of costs that could be offset if you went somewhere less expensive that you could put that money into a movie. So yeah. What kind of personality are you? What do you want out of it? But there is no shortcut. I mean, no one's going to write the script for you. No one is going to shoot your movie for you. And there's no secret sauce. So there are plenty of people that have gone to NYU that you've never heard of and never wrote, and they're out, you know, they've gone back to their day job. So, and then there's a knucklehead like me that went to UCF and never heard of it, and we did Blair Witch. So there's no secret formula. You just have to understand that, what do I get out of this? How does this help me? What can I put in to get back out of it? But it's really up to you at the end of the day.
Well, you have any thoughts on going to film school? None whatsoever.
No, you know, I mean, I know a lot of filmmakers, and I know some that went to film school, and I know some that didn't, and both groups, I have seen the most dedicated people, and in the same groups, I have seen people who are really just kind of winging it, and it's not working out for them. So, you know, I mean, I really can't say one way or the other. I'm the guy that writes about the movies, you know, so I don't really have an opinion on that one.
The points that Dan touched on that I like was access to equipment and developing a team, which what's interesting about today is the equipment is getting so good, so cheap, that you can now have Hollywood quality stuff at a much more affordable rate, which is interesting. And in terms of creating your team, I feel like social networking has kind of made it so that you can kind of get to know people in your area. We have kind of a nice community in Tampa, and it's really cool that people can say, hey, I want to, you know, help out or do something, or even events like this, you can say, hey, I saw your
there's so much more resources available to filmmakers now as opposed to when I was going in. I mean, and even if they're not in your immediate area, I mean, now, I mean, I have animators that work, you know, in a whole other part of the country. I send a file to them, they work on it, and send it back to me. I mean, and so you have a virtual community of creatives as well. So, you know, it's become really decentralized, and as long as you have support and you know how to recognize talent, and you think, oh, this guy's good, I really like this guy's work, I've been on his Vimeo page, I can check it out. All that is really helpful to kind of formulate, a team for you to get your stuff out there. But again, don't try to climb the entire mountain in one fell swoop. Just focus on doing a really good job with the little bit you have to work with, because that's going to go a lot farther than trying to produce that epic sci-fi adventure that there's no way you're going to be able to pull it off. I mean, I know those guys that I'm going to do the next Blade Runner for $5,000, right? And cut to them 5 years later, I'm still working on the effects, and now I've got 2 kids, and it's just, so just keep your expectations in check. Understand that the tools are out there, the technology's out there, but it's also no substitute for good writing and execution. But yeah, the communities now can be both at home or all over the world now. It's really it's a completely new universe.
Yeah, speaking of collaboration and community, you guys are becoming a part of kind of the Tampa Bay community and also collaborating together. What was that journey? How did you guys connect to now work together on a project?
He blackmailed me. He had some pictures of me. No, I had I've been a fan of Dan's for a long time, and I had the pleasure of meeting him at a convention a long time ago in Colorado, actually. And he was just such a cool, humble, open, honest person, and I'm like, I really like this guy. And so we really hit it off and talked, and I think we have the same kind of mentality about, the creative process, and I think we kind of have the same moral core. I hate to say that, but there's a lot of dicky people in Hollywood, and he's not one of them. So we've been he hides it well. We've been wanting to work together for a while, and talked about what's coming up, and I'll let him kind of dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, same here. Jeffery's just one of those folks that I hit it off with early on, and I mean, there's a lot of riffraff in Hollywood, if you haven't noticed. But there's a handful of really good core people that you like working with and really want to work with, and they're super creative, and they're also just good people. And Jeffery's definitely one of those folks. And so we've stayed in touch over the years, and with the help of some really good friends here. I mean, I grew up in Sarasota, so I was kind of connected to this area for years. And I just shot this movie called Skyman in the Apple Valley, kind of Southern California desert last year, and met a good friend of mine, Christian Krempel. I don't know if he's in the audience. Christian, you know that?
You better be in the audience.
He's probably having a drink. Oh, there he is. He's way in the back.
All right.
He's the best dressed guy in the room. So, but we got together. We teamed up with another good friend of ours, Charles Broadhurst, who's probably in the audience somewhere as well. But we formed a studio here in Ybor City called the Power Station, and we said, let's start making some projects here back home in Florida. And one of the first ones we thought about was called Black Veil, Tales from the Southern Gothic, and that was right up our alley. That Jeffrey likes that kind of Southern Gothic vibe, and I really like it. So we started thinking of some ideas to do an anthology, a horror anthology. That we shoot, initial season of 6 episodes, and we could do it all here in the area. Maybe utilize even Ybor for some of the ghost stories in this very building even. And we really like the idea of bringing horror back here and shooting, a top-notch, project series here that is, not kind of a one in and one out, where it's a studio that's based here, that we're shooting projects here. This will be the first of many, and that's sort of our plan. We hope to start shooting in late November, December, and that will be the first of many. So Jeffrey's been on the creative side, instrumental in helping us flesh out the stories and the ideas, and we think it's going to be scary as hell. So, yeah.
That's really exciting for us. We're very happy to have you guys here. And are you guys going to be using local, cinematographers, sound people?
No, we're shipping everyone in from LA.
Smart move.
Bring in smart move from LA.
Speaking of manager.
No, I did see that a casting call is up next Tuesday, so I know for sure.
Yeah, we have auditions on Monday, Tuesday. What's that?
Monday and Tuesday.
The official
Monday and Tuesday, 8 to 5, over at the studio.
Right down in Treeborough.
Yeah, a couple blocks down from here. So yeah, we're holding auditions, and but yeah, we want to cast, we want to crew, we want to get as many people from the local community as we can, and those that have, you know, that have run off to Atlanta, we're going to bring them back.
We appreciate that because we actually have seen an influx of projects leaving the area because we don't have incentives here. So we appreciate that even though we don't have incentives.
You do have incentives.
We have.
They're just a different kind.
Right.
I tell people it may not be a dollar incentive from the state, but we have local incentives here, but also the incentives are the enthusiasm of the crew. We have the enthusiasm of local business. We have the enthusiasm in the what I call the PMA, positive mental attitude, of people that want to make movies here. And I tell you, LA is jaded and cynical, and I want to go into an environment with people that want me or really excited about making movies. And that is my incentive.
That's great. We're getting close. I probably have about 10 to 12 minutes, and I want to make sure that people get to ask some questions. So I'm going to turn it now to the audience. I saw one hand go up right here. What is your question, sir?
Thank you for taking my question. Do you guys have any creative control over prequels, sequels, and remakes to your IPs?
No. I will say I'm very fortunate that the producer on it, Craig Perry, is a good friend of mine, so he does keep me in the loop. Like I just read the new script, so I kind of have side, you know, a little bit of creative control, but technically no. When you sell something to the studios, you kind of sell everything. So.
But you're saying you're happy with kind of what's in the pipeline.
Yeah. And that's just because we have a great producer on it. So, you know, he's worked hard to kind of keep the quality of the franchise up, and wanted to make this one something that was, again, delivered what we want, but was kind of just a little different, so it didn't feel like it was just another cookie-cutter remake. So, but in general, no creative control.
Dan, you feel the same way that?
Yeah, you want to, you know, I mean, we were just happy to be able to sell our movie. They're like, so we have your firstborn, there you go. Give blood twice a week, there you go, no problem. You know, but you basically sign everything away. You know, they're gracious, they'll ask you, you read the script, and do you like it or not, and they don't really care what you have to say about it, but you say, oh, cool.
They pat you on the head.
Yeah, but, you know, it is what it is. But, look, it's a good problem to have. That means you sold a movie, and it's getting, you know, it's a franchise, and so I can't complain.
Another question from the crowd. I see one right over here.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on his question for Jeffrey. How was working on Final Destination 5, or maybe you didn't work on that much with Myrick early on his writing, and how does it work in terms of having someone else work on your original character ideas?
You know, the good thing about working at you know, I kind of grew up at the studio starting at 19, so I kind of know how they made the sausage. So I was able to separate my creative ego from the process, and that's why I was going to quickly say, like, just because, you know, most movies that get made, they've been turned down by all the studios in town, 100 production companies. You just need to find that one champion, so that's why you can't take rejection personally. I was just fortunate enough to have them use my story for the sequel, and, you know, if the movie's good, I don't mind. Like, I thought Part 5, I wasn't involved in it, but, you know, I knew the premise and the script, and I think that movie felt like a movie that was really made for the fans. So I think that it's actually my third favorite. You know, I think it's like 1, 2, and 5 are like my favorite. Like, I just kind of as a trilogy, because it really, you know, Eric wrote that for the fans. He didn't just like write that to crank a movie out. So I think it shows. So, you know, that's what happens in business. I don't get too attached if I can't work on the sequel, because I just know that's kind of how the business is. And, you know, unless I can kind of take it in a new direction, like I feel like with the second one, at least I was able to like kind of expand upon the world and show how other characters are affected by the death of the people in the first one. So I got to kind of expand the world a little bit and not just retell the same story. I mean, if they asked me to retell the same story, I'd probably do it again, studio horror. But yeah, I don't really, I don't get too attached because I just know that that's how the business is kind of run.
Right there.
Well, first of all, The Fly and Scarface, just in case you need that remake question, if you ever get that again, you got those as well. But from a marketing standpoint, when you're, especially since Blair Witch had excellent marketing, honestly, I saw I saw it in the newspaper first and I thought it was a real thing. From a marketing standpoint, how much of a marketer do you have to be as an independent filmmaker to get your stuff out there?
That's a big question. I mean, understanding your film from a marketing standpoint is a different animal than understanding your film from a filmmaker standpoint in a lot of ways, because you have, what I tell filmmakers is that you're obviously making your movie because you think it's special, right? So what can you distill your movie down to a simple, elevator one-line pitch that encapsulates the whole premise of your film, that makes it stand out from the thousands of others that are out there? Because it's just like anything else. If you don't have a lot of time to pitch your project, or if it's in a one-page ad somewhere, or what have you, you need to capture that audience. So that hook, that one line is the start of your marketing campaign. It really is. Your entire marketing campaign, it kind of hangs off that one simple premise. So from a marketing standpoint, you can build a campaign around that if it's unique, and if it's not a unique idea, then you're gonna be more beholden to who you have in the movie, and plugging into a particular genre or what have you. But I always try to tell filmmakers what's unique about your movie, what's unique about your property, that you can distill down into one line, and then build your one sheet, build your pitch around that, because that's and then a lot of it is just like graphic arts. Find a good graphic art person that can kind of make your one sheet really kind of nice and pop out and that sort of thing. I see a lot of really bad one sheets that try not to scrimp on that if you can. If you know somebody in art school, if you know a graphic artist, find those people to help you to take your idea and make it graphically appealing, because that's where a lot of films fail, is like on the one sheet. And I'll tell you, man, I'm a sucker for anybody, like a good one sheet. I get a good one sheet sent to me, or I see it on a poster or whatever, I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'll give that an extra look if from a marketing standpoint, they've done a good job on the one sheet. So yeah, find that one hook of your movie, and understand that anyone driving by in a car, seeing the billboard, or flipping a page in a magazine, you've only got them for seconds, so what can you hook them in with?
And I think you do actually have to really kind of take control of your marketing. Like, that's why I think it's good to be on social media. I have friends that are like, oh, I know my friends are sick of hearing me. It's like, no, you've got to promote the hell out of your stuff. Like, I had a filmmaker whose movie came out, and he wasn't on Twitter, and I told him for like 6 months to get on Twitter, and he's like, my girlfriend's going to set it up one day. I'm like, dude, just get on friggin' Twitter. Like, I'm tweeting about the friggin' movie, and I need to tag you in it. He's never gone on Twitter. So, you do have to have the right material. You have to separate what the movie is with what you have in your head as well, because I just finished directing a movie that has horror elements to it, but it's more of a mystery, and my producer wants to sell it as a horror movie, and I'm like, we can't, because that's not our target audience for this, because it doesn't have all the gore and the stuff that you expect to have in a horror movie. So you have to market your movie correctly, and then find outlets that support that, like places like iHorror. You send a very nice personal letter to him, and there are so many websites out there that cater to so many different audiences. So if you reach out to those places, offer to send them a copy of your project to screen. A lot of those places will pick it up and run stories, and then it spreads. So yeah.
And know your audience. Don't try to conquer the whole world, the whole internet. Just know who's your demographic and who's your audience. Focus on those first. That's what we did on Blair Witch, is that we focused on our core audience first and let them sort of do a lot of the work for us. Once they got kind of hooked in, then they spread the word. So understand who your core audience is and appeal to them right at the starting gate.
Let me jump right in on that also. First of all, the fact that so many of your films are here, you're halfway there to getting reviews on a website like iHorror, because we've been involved in this process from the beginning. This is our baby, and I have seen every single one of your films multiple times at this point. So you're halfway there, But also, one of the things to remember when you're reaching out to reviewers is to know what kind of films they tend to like, what subgenres they're really into. I told you I'm really into the paranormal, I'm really into like supernatural type stuff. I'm not a body horror guy, I'm not a gore hound, I'm really not. It just doesn't appeal to me. So if you send me that, I'm less likely to work on it. Now I will probably forward it to someone else who that's their bag. But, you know, knowing who you are sending your stuff to ahead of time will really cut out some of the middleman and get things there a lot more quickly.
Speaking of iHorror and marketing, you guys are partnering with iHorror on this project you are working on. That's got to be exciting. You want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, it's very exciting. Anthony Pernica is, I don't know if he's in the audience, he's like, a big hand to him, by the way.
Yeah, let's give it amazing.
He's been a good friend of ours for the last, I guess it's been a year, almost 2 years now, but he was out on the set of Skyman as well. And he was sort of a master of the online kind of horror space, and being that sort of my bag of tricks, we thought, well, on this particular project, especially with the Black Veil project, part of what we're talking about is one of the big humps to get over is awareness for what we're doing. And so we thought it would be a good idea to team up with iHorror to help promote Black Veil, have them not only be a marketing partner with us on it, but possibly distribution down the road, and also behind the scenes providing content that they can put on the site as well. So it's going to be, we're still figuring out exactly what all that will entail, but what I love about iHorror, what I love about Anthony is his willingness to not only kind of experiment with all these different kind of mediums, but his creative prowess. He's a very, very creative guy. He helped design our Skyman pins that glow in the dark, which are really cool, and our poster. And so he really embraces the film and the story of what we're doing, and that's exciting when you've got someone in your camp that knows that world, but also creatively understands it.
And he's local to Tampa Bay as well,
Absolutely.
which is nice, so we're keeping it all local.
Yeah.
And this is the first time that he's put together a physical film festival, and I feel like it's gone great so far, so hopefully this is, What I'd love to see is, you know, this continues on and becomes one of the bigger festivals in...
I think it could be a huge festival. I mean, again, you have everything you need here.
Oh, he's right!
Yeah, there he is.
Keep going.
Make a bow. There you go. Yeah. But we've got a tremendous amount of talent here and skilled professionals here. I mean, we've got a great team at Power Station. Doug Fox is another local guy here that's helping us out, and he's one of our partners at Power Station. So, there's a lot of people from LA that have come here. They're just tired of the treadmill in LA and all over, and so never undersell yourself here. This is like a great market. This is a great area to shoot films, and the incentives will come. You build films, you make films. The state will eventually come around and realize what they're missing out on, and it'll come back. Mark my words.
All right. I feel like that's unfortunately where we got to end, because I think we're right at 5:30. 6:30, excuse me, thank you. Yeah, which we had an hour to talk, and I think unfortunately that's where a good note to wrap on, that the future is bright, and that we appreciate you guys coming on stage, and we appreciate Anthony for putting this together. I also want to recognize Josh Knopf, who you know well, helped put this together as well, and all the volunteers in the iHorror shirts helped put it together. And it's not over yet. This is, we're just crossing the halfway mark. We've got some more films to show. We've got the awards coming up, and then we've got the after party at the castle, which I want to see you at.
Oh, no, I'll be there. I don't know what it is, but I just heard bondage and...
That was enough?
Yeah.
All right, great. So stick around. We're going to take a little break.
I was joking, I'm not into bondage.
That's that selling point.
Yeah. No, we got a lot more fun stuff planned. So thank you guys.